what we're going to talk about, something I've really never covered before, is yes, there are all these cool little things that I do, and you can work on them and you can become proficient at them, but in what ways am I applying them? When and where? What's that rhythm and timing look like? So maybe you use my foot technique, but how do I use it? But more importantly, where do I use it? And in concert with other things within the process of a turning movement, how does it fall? Where does it land so that I'm efficient? If I compete against you in a motor competition, what I'm going to show you right now is exactly my process to the best that I can articulate it. Most cone competitions are turns, series of turns, fast ones, slow ones, tight ones, open ones, right? So here's my process specifically for getting around this thing as quickly and snappy as I can. Here we go. I'm approaching the turn, all right? I'm on the brakes. Now, I trail brake. So I've got front brake on, one finger front brake. I've got rear brake on. Now, I'm not going to get into the hows and whys of what is trail braking and what is foot technique and what is early friction zone. All these things exist in their own videos. But for the purposes of explaining this stuff to you, just refer to those videos if you have any question as to what in the hell is he talking about, right? So I'm coming in. My first thing in my brain, I want to slow down. Now, because I have access to front brake, hard on the brakes, I'm going to brake later and I'm going to drive in harder, okay? So my weight is forward. I'm countering the weight transfer as I'm accelerating. Now I'm on front and rear brake. So that's happening right here as I'm setting up for my turning movement. Hard, hard, hard brakes. Right about here, the motorcycle starts falling into the turning movement. As it starts falling into the turning movement, a couple things happen in sequence. One, I'm pushing with my inside foot to help speed that drop, okay? So my weight is on this leg as I'm dropping in. That's one thing that's happening. The other piece that's happening is right here, I'm starting to trail off the brakes. I'm not coming off the brakes, but somewhere in here, I was on threshold brakes, meaning a 10 front brake. The rear, not so much. The rear on a scale of 1 to 10, if 10 was threshold brakes, I'm at about a 4, okay? But I am using rear brake and I am using front brake. So 10 up here, 4 down here. I'm coming in here and hard, hard, hard on the brakes. Now I'm starting to initiate a turning movement, dropping the bike in. So I'm pushing with that inside foot to speed things up. Now, right in here, another critical thing is happening that I do, and it is setting up the friction zone. So if you think about what responsibilities we have at this point in our process, we're just really slowing down. Yes, I'm using my inside foot to push the bike down a bit, but more or less, I'm just kind of waiting for this turn to come up. So let's take care of things here while we can, while we're kind of not stuck with a bunch of other things going on, right? So right about here, as I'm pushing with my foot, as the motorcycle starts to lean in, however slight, and I'm still on the brakes, I'm starting to set up the friction zone. Now, if you remember, I said I'm trailing off the brakes. Why am I trailing off the brakes? Well, if you watch my trail braking video, you'll see when the motorcycle is straight up and down, I'm asking the tires to slow me. That's all I'm asking of them, right? 100% of that rubber on the road is to slow me down. Now I'm starting to initiate a turning movement. Now I'm asking for 2 jobs to take place instead of just the 1, right? So I can't keep the same amount of brake force as I'm now splitting up the tasks of the tire, right? I'm just going to lose the front, and we don't want that. We want to execute a nice rapid turn. So inside foot's pressing. I'm starting to set up the friction zone, and understand with my right hand, that means I have to have some dexterity to be able to ease off the front as I'm also setting up the throttle, okay? It's going to take practice for you to get your clutch set and your friction zone set while you're also on the front brake and trailing off the front brake. It sounds complicated, but do it straight up and down first, where you're rolling on the brakes, setting up the friction zone as you're on the brakes and rolling off the brakes. It's not as complicated as it sounds, and you will get it. Do it 5,000 times and you will have it, I promise you. So just put in the work and you'll get it. Don't judge it, just put in the work. So friction zone's getting set up. Foot is pushing. Okay, now once I initiate that foot push, I'm not continuing really to push too hard on the foot. It's kind of an initiation piece, right? So I'm initiating that push, I'm trailing with the brakes, I'm setting up the friction zone, and as the motorcycle slows and as it leans, I'm trailing off the brakes more and more. So what does that look like? Well, I said I was 10 back here, right? Threshold brakes, and 4 to the rear. By the time I'm here, where I'm really starting to drop the bike in, this is at least a 5. I've cut this down in half about, and this is about a 2. Not a lot of rear brake here, okay? But here's what's profound about the front brake, and you'll see this in my trail braking video. As the motorcycle starts to lean over, and I'm still applying front brake, the power of that front brake is getting my motorcycle to want to go drop down further and the bars to turn. Well, I'm trying to initiate a turning movement, so those are 2 fantastic things that I do want, okay? We just have to be careful not to be ham-fisted with the front brake so we don't hit the deck, okay? So again, those 5,000 reps, trust me, you'll get it, okay? Don't be afraid of the front brake. Walk into it, and trust me, it's probably the biggest cheat code on riding a motorcycle in tight patterns, in my humble opinion. So, as the bike's coming in, I'm pretty much done with that left side foot push. The tires are starting to drop, and the bars are starting to turn. I'm trailing off. I've got a nice hum of the motor because the friction zone is in play here, okay? And right about here, we'll call this the apex, about halfway around my turning movement, this is approximately where this bike finally snaps into full lock. This area right here is probably the most important spot in my turning movement. A lot of things are happening here just in my process outside of wheel position, rear wheel cheat, don't hit a cone, avoid something on the course, head and eyes down track. All those things are in play as they normally would be, and you currently utilize sort of those metrics when you're executing a turning movement. But the other thing that's really powerful here is this is the intersection of finishing brakes to accelerating. So it's this midpoint here, this intersection where I'm changing from slowing to going. And that changes a couple things. So as I am at this point, remember I've been trailing off the brakes. So when am I off the brakes? I am off the brakes right here, and this is the spot where approximately in here my bars click into full lock. So I click right into full lock here, okay? Now, remember I set my friction zone up back here as I started adding lean angle. Well, but I'm not adding power. I don't want to go yet. I'm still on brakes, right? So we're not going to talk out of both sides of our mouth, meaning we're not going to try to go and slow right here as we transition. We're going to be on brakes. We're setting up the friction zone so that part's handled. So we can seamlessly hand off the slowing to the going. So there's not this big brakes, pause, gas. We don't want that big upset chassis by moving from one thing to the next. I want to roll. I want to flow from the braking portion and flow into the acceleration part on the second half of this turning movement. So at this intersection right here, this midpoint, coming off brakes, the bike is clicking into full lock, all right? Now, I've pushed with my inside foot, that part's done. The friction zone is already set. So right here, right when that bike's clicking into full lock, I'm starting to go and apply power. And it's here that I'm fully off brakes now. A lot of people will drag their rear brake all the way through the turning movement. Why? Well, it felt great back here. It gave them stability, and that's true. And like I said, I do use rear brake. Can I do all the patterns without? And is it great to learn friction zone without? Absolutely. But from an efficiency and stopwatch thing, rear brake's beneficial. But they'll stay on the rear brake all the way through the turning movement because it felt good here. Well, my recommendation is practice coming off of it about halfway through the turning movement, because it is at this point, typically, generally, where we're saying, okay, we're done braking and now we want to start accelerating. And when you get off the brakes here, you're sending one singular message: slow, then go. Rather than slow, stay on the brakes and let's try to get the friction zone and let's try to get power going, and then the bike's sort of fighting itself. Not great. So all those things are in play that I mentioned, the clicking into full lock, I'm starting to add power. Well, there's one other little piece that happens right here for me when I'm turning, and it has to do with my hip movement. So this little hip thing, I have a video about hips to get the motorcycle to turn tighter. Now keep in mind, imagine if the motorcycle was right here, okay, it's sitting right here, and I'm not sliding my butt on the seat. The bike is here, and I'm moving it. So I'm shifting the bike's seat back and forth. Well, if the motorcycle was standing straight up and down in front of you, you would see this, right? Well, so imagine for a second, if you're already leaned over in a turn, and then you add even more lean angle. And what it also does is it creates a natural counterbalance. As I move that way, my upper body tends to move the other way, just a little bit. So what's happening here is I'm dropped over, I'm off the brakes now, I've transitioned into the acceleration portion with a nice friction zone, the bars are at full lock, and I'm going, and then that last little bit of drop that over with my hips to just move that bike over ever so much more and create a little bit more natural counterbalance, really drops that thing in, and that's where I get a nice tight radius. And because I have a little bit more natural counterbalance position, it helps stabilize and balance me, especially if right in here I'm hammering and I push. The front end pushes or the back end comes out. I'm a little bit more on top of the bike. So very, very useful. Those are the pieces to my process, okay? I'm going to be up on that bike when I'm hammering the brakes. I'm going to get my body up forward, and my arms will not lock out. You will notice that. That way I have full range of motion at the bars. I'm not hindering any range of motion on the handlebars. That's going to be in my head also. It's the setup, dropping right here into this intersection where we're finishing a few tasks and we're continuing on with some new things. And the sooner you can get on the gas, the smoother this is going to be. The bike will only give you so much traction. But if I can start moving the needle right in here, nice and easy, nice and subtle, and start kind of helping it along, then by the time I'm over here, I've got more momentum than you do. And now I can really hammer the throttle because I'm going from something to more rather than nothing to everything. So that also means my chassis and my stability, everything is better. I'm more comfortable as the pilot. The motorcycle is more planted. I'm going to get better traction. The whole thing's smoother. It's going to look slower. It's going to feel slower, but the stopwatch will prove you right that this technique actually reveals itself as being pretty effective.